Hello, my friends. John LaRuffa here with another Straight Up Solo. And in this episode, we're going to do a top 10 Uwe Rosenberg solo board game list. Now, first of all, Uwe Rosenberg is one of the nicest designers I've ever met. I actually had the opportunity to meet him way back in 2013. It was a real privilege and a pleasure. And when I did, I was actually at Essen, which was also a huge blessing. And he actually signed a copy of one of my games that's in his list. So I really enjoyed that. But he's a very nice guy. He publishes amazing games. And I just am very happy and excited to share my top 10 from a solo perspective for you. But before I get going on that, if you haven't done so already, please like and subscribe to my YouTube channel. And if you have, thank you so much. I very much appreciate it. All right. Again, these are all the way I look at it from a solo perspective. So even though many of these games play great multiplayer, I'm focusing on the solo aspect here. The first one, my number 10, not an easy game to find these days. Maybe it's a little bit easier. Mercator. I think they may have reprinted it, I don't know, just a little bit. But Mercator is kind of an interesting game in the fact that it's not like any of his other ones. Basically, what you have going on in this game is just a ton of resource gathering. All of these areas out here that you're going to move your board to will continue to grow and grow resources, and you're basically trying to fulfill these contracts that come up. And the more contracts you fulfill, the more points you get. But it's a unique one in the fact that it's just different than his other ones. I think it's a lot of fun, but I've also seen people not really love it. I like it, but it's definitely a number 10. And if I had to say, you know, it is a step down, I would say, below on my list, below number 9. So there's Mercator. I like it. It is an acquired taste. That is my number 10. Now, my number 9, Glass Roads. I really like Glass Roads. I think he did a fantastic job with this game. Basically, what he did was he took some of the aspects of different games of his, the Orta Labora, for instance, and he kind of simplified a little bit of it, put it into this production wheel over here that forces you to deal with, you know, the resources that can expire, but also maximums on the resources that you can only be available to produce, I think, at most 3 of, I think it was brick and glass, and I can't remember the third one. Maybe it was just brick and glass. But it was a good game. This game is fun because it is a little bit on the shorter side. It doesn't take too long to set up. You're basically controlling the game with a hand of cards that you can use. You can't use all of them every round. The puzzle of the solo is that you get cards that come in and out of play that you can use. And it's an interesting game. It's a low-scoring game. If I remember correctly, you're trying to get upwards of 30-odd points or so to have a good score. But it's definitely one where very tight game. Every move counts, and what you're trying to do is also very compact. So that's my number 9. I like Glass Roads a lot. Give it a try if you haven't already. Okay, number 8, At the Gates of Loyang. At the Gates of Loyang is that was the third game, the third big game that he made, and what it really did was it took some of these aspects of contract fulfilling and things kind of. There was not a real harvest in this game that I remember. I'm sorry, that's not true. There was a harvest, but it was you had to plant, and it was specific round to round. Pardon me. It just didn't have the feel. I'm sorry, there wasn't a resource buildup. It was all about planting and making that happen, which was a lot of fun. It was different. It wasn't like there was just a growing amount of stuff on the board that you would hold out till you couldn't stand it anymore and then grab it. That wasn't the case. The case here was a specific amount of tension around trying to get your money maximized and plant and have an engine rolling in that you could satisfy customers with, and not just short-term customers, but long-term customers. A lot of tension in this game. Card play was good, but I also really felt like this game worked really well as a solo and not so well as much anything else. I played it 3-handed once. I didn't like it. 2-handed was okay, or 3-player ones. 2-player was okay, but it was great as a solo puzzle. I really enjoyed it. Okay, next on the list, my number 7 Doucheford. So Doucheford is a combination of a lot of different games, really. It feels like the tightness of Glass Roads in some of the spatial aspects of the cards. There's not a ton of actions in this game either. It's pretty constrained. The way that you are using the, what is it called? It's like the way you're doing the fish. You're passing out fish and giving them to different people, and you're trying to build them up on different elders and such. Very unique in that respect for his games, that you're trying to get this engine going that's gathering fish. When you do that, you can use those fish in the wood for resources to buy stuff. There's also coins in the game, and that makes a very intricate and interesting experience. The cards come out in different sections. So you have like A cards and B cards, then you have some more C cards that show up. So the pacing is interesting. I think it works best as a 3-game campaign when you're playing solos. You're trying to exceed 100 points versus just one game, because the way the cards can come out, you can use this 3-game campaign to kind of do kind of a more thorough situation. It takes some of the randomness of the card play out and injects the strategic part of the game, which you're trying to just maximize everything and get your best out of it. Otherwise, it is a little bit swingy if you just do one game at a time. But if you do multiple ones, then you'll be in better shape. So that's why I like that one. And that is my number 7. All right, number 6, Hallertau. Now, Hallertau is another one of his newer games that is, I would say, pretty interesting and unique. There's worker placement up here where you're trying to get different actions, okay? And as these kind of fill up, sometimes they go down, sometimes they stay out. So you can keep playing on these spaces, but it costs more of your workers to do so. You get more workers by expanding your village, and the more expansion you get, the more points you score and everything. I think that's how you get them. It's been a little bit of time. But the main deal here is you're trying to gather 5 or several different types of resources to invest in your village in 5 different categories. And as you do that, you will move this village investment board over. It scores you more points. I'm pretty darn sure that you also unlock more people. Yes, you do, when you do that. And then you have these other areas up here that are used for kind of a harvest action, like you've seen in some of the other games, or you would see in some of the other games, where you can plant things and you get resources move down, and you get a certain amount of those resources depending on how you handle your fields, which is cool. So you got like a field rotation system in here. Probably the best thing about this game, in honesty, is that you have 4 different decks. No, pardon me, 8. I think 8 decks you combine. You play 2 of them each. There's 4 gate decks and 4 like action decks, and you combine them to play different things. So there's a lot of variety in Hallertau. The only thing that I don't really care for about with this game is that the way that the resources work, they almost blend together to not be so unique. It just kind of blends in, and it doesn't give you the uniqueness of some of those other games, because I need to have this and this and that. But as you can see in the back here, all of these things, for the most part, are needed to move things over. Now some of them have different combinations and everything else, but it just didn't feel as special enough. You were just kind of trying to gather even amounts, so to speak, of resources. And that one, I think, just it held the game back a little bit from being as good as some of his other ones. Now, number 5. Number 5 was probably his biggest harvest, goods conversion, Euro slammed game as far as I'm concerned, and that was Orta Labora. Now, this game had a massive production wheel, tons of different resources. They all felt very different, and you were trying to use them in all sorts of different ways. When it comes to heavy Euro-thinky games, this is probably one of his biggest ones, because there was so much you could do. And on a solo side, you had, both the games, but you could play on the Irish side or the French side. And depending on which side you did, you used different goods to convert different things, different production chains. This was a great game, great game. The only thing that I got stale about it after many, many plays is that, pardon me, it did come down to mostly building placement in your huge monastery area, right? And that was the theme. But you basically were trying to place, in order to score the most points, certain buildings next to other certain buildings. And because of that, as you started to get the game, it was almost solvable. So that is the only thing I have as far as a negative on this one. But it was so fun to get to that point where you got, where I finally found the specifics on how to get there. I mean, it was just a real joy to play. Turning this into that into this, buying different things or trading in different resources, just do it. This is just a great game. Really awesome for anybody who likes resource conversion, building different things, buying different things. And the strategies were varied, but you could not do the game without focusing on building placement. That was the whole major, it was the major aspect of the scoring. Yes, you could do production chains to turn different things into higher value things, which was cool. Probably my favorite part of the game. You would need to do a lot of resource conversion, which was also a lot of fun. And I think in general, this game, really had it in spades and did such a fantastic job from maximizing that idea that he had. So I really like it. I really like Orta Labora. Okay, number 4. This was a tough choice. Okay, so in these sections here, I was at first, a long time ago, kind of flipped around. I actually thought my number 4 was better than my number 3. But as time went on, year after year, I started to appreciate my number 3 a little more than number 4, but they are neck and neck. And my number 4 is the game that Uwe Rosenberg signed for me, and it is Caverna. Caverna, with the expansions of a couple of different things. So there's a smaller couple expansions where you get like the Wishing Well and other small buildings. But then the big ones, the Forgotten Folk, that made this game just shine. So I know what they say, or that some people say about this game in that, there's no variability in the starting conditions. However, when you put in the Forgotten Folk, there's 8, I think of them, 8 or 10. All of that varies the starting conditions, because what that does is it takes certain buildings out of play, puts different buildings into play, and really changes your strategy. So I love this game. I think it is just a gem, a fantastic game. The only negative is it takes a long time to set up because you have to put all the buildings in different spots. But that is it. When I usually leave this, I put this game down, I play it 3 or 4 times in a row because I like it that much. Caverna is just fantastic. And I really think it is one of his finest productions. And actually, the reason I liked it more than my number 3 for a while is because it was such a wide open sandbox. There are so many things that you can do without having to catch certain cards or different things to come up. It's all available. So you could try one strategy this game, one strategy that game. Lots of different stuff to do. You could go heavy on the Dwarven warriors. You could go not so heavy on the warriors and just to completely ignore that and try different things. And if you did those things, it was remarkable how, as long as you didn't try to go in the middle, and I guess you could do that a little bit, but you really could score very competitively by doing all in on one or all in on the other. So it just shows kind of the variety of different strategies you can take to do well. The other thing about this, with the expansion, is that each of the different races was so varied, it really made the game shine in different ways and forced you to try different things. Plus, it doubled the amount of buildings that you were in. You didn't play with all the buildings at once. That's fine, but you play with a whole set of other ones that really fit well with the specific Forgotten Folk that you're using. So Caverna, love Caverna. And Caverna is also one of those games, you can't really see it here, but it had a great table presence. Just, you had your own board. You had, see, this is the thing. It's split in half. But this one, just like Agricola, had just a ton of different choices to take. Actions came out. I mean, it was clearly, it was like a sequel to Agricola. There's no doubt about it. But just a fantastic game. Fantastic. All right. Now, number 3. It's Agricola, folks. The revised edition of Agricola or the original, it doesn't really matter. If you have the original, then you have a ton of cards already in there. If you have the revised, you kind of do need to pick up a few of those card packs. I've also picked up the Farmers of the Moor expansion, as you can see right back there. And it adds, I think, a very fun additional level to this game versus the base game. But it is not as necessary as I think some of the other expansions are, because there's so much to do with the campaigns in this game from a solo standpoint without it, that it's, I think just the base game itself is terrific. And if you couldn't find the Farmers of the Moor, I would still get the base game and enjoy that for, literally like I did, hundreds of sessions. I've played this game so many times, it's just outstanding. Now, you do need extra card packs if you play it out more often than not, because the same kind of cards will show up. Even though there's a lot of cards in the base game, you only use certain ones for the solo for 1 or 2 players, and so those aren't that big of a deck. So you're gonna need to get a couple more, and then I don't know the cards well enough in all of them because I haven't seen them all to compare them, so I couldn't recommend which ones you should or shouldn't get. But I would just say that do your research, figure it out, but. Definitely just a fantastic game and such a fun game to play through the 7-game campaign. And then if you do get the Farmers of the Moor, it's just a great level of additional things to think about that really changes what you have to do as far as heating the houses, your rooms, and then it really dials up the score you need to win. Instead of 50 for that first game, you need 70. And so I think that's really kind of cool to bring that up. So I like this game a lot. It's one of those games that I've played it literally hundreds of times, and I haven't played that many games hundreds of times, and I'm still excited to play it every time I think about it or comes out. So that is my number 3. All right. Now, I want to pause here for an injunction before I get to my top 2. The injunction is one game I'm not putting on this list. Now, it is definitely number 11, but it didn't make the top 10, even though for a long time it was one of my favorite games of his, and that is Le Havre. The reason I didn't put Le Havre on the top 10 list is because from a solo standpoint, I felt like the game, in order to do well, you basically had to do everything. It's an awesome game. I really like it, but if there was one, because there's so many similarities on this table of games, I would say Le Havre does not make the top 10. Because you have, in order to win that game, and this maybe you can, I'd like you to tell me if you disagree, but it always felt like I came down to the fact that I had to, for the most part, get steel going, and I had to build the steel ships and the yachts. I mean, there was just no other way around it, and it all came down to getting to that point where I'm making steel. You had to buy the cokery and the colliery, you had to buy the steel mill, you had to buy the ironworks, you had to buy everything. And yes, there was some things at the end you could do with your bonus building or whatever, or a couple of bonuses that would help. But you always had to go that route. And if you didn't have the steel, you just weren't going to score well. I could never ignore that and break the 100 I think you needed from a standpoint of winning. So that's my 11. And the reason I'm stopping now is because I mentioned it between 2 great games. Agricola, right after Agricola came Le Havre, and I love Le Havre. But over the test of time, over the years, that one I played less and less, where I played all these other ones more and more. So I want to mention it as kind of an honorary mention, and it does have a special place in my heart and in my collection. There it is over there. But it is not in the top 10. Okay, enough of that. Now, my number 2. Fields of Arle, or Arle, I always say Arle, with the expansion pack is just a gem of a game. Amazing, amazing, amazing game. This is the quintessential min-max Uwe Rosenberg experience, and it plays best, I think, with 1 player. Although you can play it with 2 or even 3 with the expansion. But when you throw in the Tea and Traders expansion, the amount of different things you can do and the different crunchy choices are just amazing. You have all of these actions. Almost all of them can be upgraded. They all intertwine with each other. There's a harvest. There's feeding your people. There's building stuff. There's maximizing your plot of land. and developing that and putting buildings out. This game, Fields of Arle, just amazing. I could play it again and again and again and again. Now, the only thing that's different about, or that some people might have an issue with, again, there is no random setup in the conditions. That doesn't matter to me because I like to try to focus on different strategies every time I play and try something else. It pretty much, there are, I shouldn't say there's no, because there are a couple of buildings that come in and a couple that you randomize a little bit, and more so with the tea and traders. So there is a little bit more, but for the most part, you could play the same similar game over and over if you wanted to. But I still think, especially with the tea and trader, it puts in enough new stuff that you could play it differently and force a different setup if you wanted to. I just love this game. It is just such a great experience to think about, to figure out how do I going to invest into the different actions and what am I going to go for? Am I going to push heavy on, getting this peat out of the way so I can expand my farm? Am I not going to work as much on that? Am I going to focus more on the trading aspect where I'm going to put things on boats and carts and refine those goods, turn them into better things? Am I going to try for one of the bigger buildings, or am I going to even try for two of them? Do I spend more time, getting up my resources and building an engine and having those things just churn out tons and tons of leather and the other stuff that I can use that you could flip over a couple times to get 5 points each. Just so much to explore. If you haven't played this game, I implore you to do so. It is fantastic. And it's really, it's a solo experience. When you play 2 or 3 players, there's a slight amount of blocking in there, but it's not very much. And yeah, there's a little competition over the buildings, but this is a solo game as far as I can tell, through and through. And when you put in the Tea and Trader expansion, it blows the lid off the possibilities and makes for an even richer experience where you can use the tea to do to double up your actions or give you more things that you can accomplish, and it does so in such a way it can supercharge these actions or add just 1 or 2. It's just amazing. Love the game. Love the game. All right, and finally, my number 1. Most of you who have been watching my channel know exactly what this is going to be, but it's definitely a feast for Odin. It's a feast for Odin, and it's with the Norwegian expansion. I think that is really an essential expansion as far as I'm concerned. Just because this game is so great, more is better in my opinion. I know this is a sandbox game. Some people can feel overwhelmed, but I just love the exploration. This game takes all of the stuff that he has done, with the exception of good spaces piling up. It doesn't do that, and then it puts in this puzzle. This little puzzle of trying to fit different things together, which doesn't seem very thematic until you think about, no, wait, these are Vikings. They're going to want to bring in hordes of goods, and they want to put them in different places. And, they're going to try to build up this huge, loot chest, so to speak. And they're going to explore different areas and conquer things and need to feed people and all this stuff. I mean, a Feast for Odin to me is the top. It's the top. I love the game. I love the base game too, but as soon as that expansion came out, I was immediately compelled to pick it up. Picked it up, loved it because it changes the solo board a bit. It makes it more constrictive, which I think is good. It changes some of the actions a little bit. It adds even more places to explore. It adds more to the different goods you can get, and I do like all the little mini expansions too. I have those. Those are fun. Just this game is top notch. My favorite game ever made. No doubt about it. I love a lot of games, but this one is the top. And so far, I would love it if Uwe Rosenberg could top it. I really would. Because if he does, that would just be amazing. But I've played this game so many times since it's come out, I don't know, 6 years ago maybe? Was it a 2016 release? Can't remember exactly. 2016, 2015, somewhere in that time frame. But A Feast for Odin is a game that every solo player should try. Now, I know there are some people out there that don't like wide open sandboxes. And for those who don't like that kind of experience, I understand this is not the game for you. Because there's nothing really compelling you to go in one direction or another. Even all the different professions you draw and the different cards you get in this game, they can almost be completely ignored if you want to, and you can focus on other things. but there's just so many different strategies to try to explore. There's so many different aspects. There's different islands to go to. There's different buildings to build. You can put a lot of effort into gaining, resources through pillaging. You could ignore that and do a lot of immigration. You could do a lot of exploration. You could just whale and hunt and get your food that way. There's just so much here. Just a fantastic game, and one that I can't recommend enough, especially for everyone's solo collection. It is great, and if you really want to, you can try that game for free on Board Game Arena. You could try before you buy and do a solo training game there to see. I will tell you this, it's much harder to play online when you don't know the game because you don't see everything spread out in front of you, so be aware of that. But that being said, clearly my top number one of his, and I love it, and I think it's just a fantastic game. So, with that, I thank you very much. Now, I will say, I didn't include New York Zoo either. That's a good game of his, but it doesn't rise to the level of some of these larger ones, and I guess it's because I prefer heavier games. It is a nice light game. It is, I think it's better than the other 3 games that he had of those Paul O'Meal trilogies where you had Indian Summer, Cottage Garden, and I'm always going to forget the other one. That's the one that's kind of in the spring, and I forget it. I apologize. Those games were good, but I ultimately sold them kind of one at a time once I had 2 of them in the app form, and then the third one, because I think that, at least in my experience, New York Zoo is a little better. And I used to have Patchwork, although I never had the solo version. I think there's a solo version of it. I never had that. I did like that game a lot. I have it in the app, and I've played it a ton. But keep cranking them out, Uwe. I love what you do. I love the games you make. I'm very much looking forward to Atiwa and Orange. I never can say it. I want to say Orange Canalberg, but I don't know what that game is. I've pre-ordered both of them. I'm very much looking forward to playing those as soon as they show up. Thanks again for watching, everybody. I really appreciate it. Whatever you do in the future, I hope you have a fantastic time doing it. Take it easy.